So Jamal Niaz here with the UK's latest UFC signing, Mick Parkin. You know, it's a lot of pressure going into your first fight, UFC London, O2 Arena, but not for yourself because you had your trial run to get the contract with the UFC on Dana White's Contender series. You had to fight in front of the main man himself to get the contract, and you came through with flying colours against a very game, tough opponent. So, first of all, how does it feel to be with the UFC now? And with your teammate headlining the show as well is absolutely awesome, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. So I was lucky to get the Contender series fight. I got a tough opponent, probably my hardest opponent to date, with the early storm, and then managed to get the submission. Obviously impressed Dana White to get a contract, and then come home, had a slight few injuries, so like sorted myself out. I'm good to go now. Then the London card come about, so it was perfect realistically. And then obviously Tom was headlining, so I'm in a camp now with Tom. Another few big guys are down here training. My main training partner, Phil DeFries, he's fighting the week before us. So me, Tom and Phil have got a fight camp around the same time, so it's absolutely felt perfect, really.
Yeah, I was speaking to Phil just then before, and that helps massively, doesn't it, when all you guys are fighting towards the same goal. You know, Tom's fighting in the main event, you're on that card, and Phil's fighting next weekend. You guys are just thriving off each other, and the talent that you have around you three guys at this gym is absolutely incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm based at Seaham, like I'm from Sunderland originally. Me and Phil are both from the same area, so we train day in day out at TFT through Seaham, and then obviously in camp you need big bodies. So realistically, we've got a few heavy guys back. We've got a Paul Elliott who signed at 1FC. He started coming up here as well. A few lads who are big guys who train with us day in day out, and obviously we need some harder sparring, some like bigger guys. We come up here and like on the mat sometimes there's 8 big guys, which is like unheard of, and they're all pretty like high standards. Not like you can get an easy round. So we've come up here, I think about 8 weeks out, 9 weeks out, me and Phil have come up there with sparring there with camp, started doing MMA rounds with Tom, get fresh man off the big guys up here, then we'll do 2 days up here, up Wigan and Golborne and fighting for fitness, and then this Evo gym, then sometimes the Wigan Warriors training ground in the cage. So we'll do 2 days up here, then we'll go back and me and Phil drill and spar ourselves back home. So we're getting a good mix of going back to our head coach Andrew Fisher, he shows us some techniques, we drill them, then we'll come here and spar and get like grafty stuff here, then more technical stuff when we're back home.
Because you started off with the kickboxing style, the kickboxing career. I think it was around about 18 years old you had your first kickboxing fight. But now, like you've got that great stand-up background, but you're smothering grappling style where you get opponents to the ground, they can't get back up, and you either go for the submission or ground and pound. Is that what sets you apart, that full well-roundedness? Because a lot of heavyweights from years gone by, not necessarily today, but that was more stand and bang, wasn't it? But that's what sets you apart, isn't it?
Definitely, I started off kickboxing. I think I had about 11, 12 kickboxing fights, K1, and I got into MMA. I've always grappled, I was with jiu-jitsu and kickboxing, but I just like the kickboxing a little bit more. And as time go by, I realised I like them both sort of thing. I was good at both. But yeah, I definitely felt like early days people asked us, I would say I'm more of a striker, but now I'm just saying I'm well-rounded. I can wrestle, I can grapple. It's good to like go back, and I feel like coming here, I've got Tom who's like obviously great well-rounded, but like got amazing boxing. So I'm training with the likes of him, picking his brain, get little techniques from him. Then I go home and I've got Phil who's probably the best at crushing people on top. So I steal little things from him and I feel like I'm just pinching good parts from him. And like when I'm fighting guys who are my level, I'm like murdering them because I feel so confident striking, grappling anywhere. I feel like no one's going to be as strong as Phil as keeping us down the floor. And like I do good with him getting back up and like learning stuff from him. And obviously there's nearly going to be as good on the feet, I feel, as Tom. And I'm starting to do okay with him. So I just come down here like every week I just try and get a little bit better. So Tom might catch us with something, I'll be pinning his loads, and then I'll go away, drill stuff, then try and work it here, or it hasn't worked, or then the next week something's worked, I'm not getting pinned as much, so I can like come in here, I can see me improvements, so I feel like I'm just getting better and better. Then the time the UFC comes, like I feel like mega confident now. I'm like, oh well, if he does this, well I know I can do this, do you know what I mean? So I've got like every area to win, like whether it's grappling, wrestling or striking, I feel like I'm better in all areas now.
You showed that on the Contender fight when your opponent looked like he was getting control on the floor and you just flipped out of it and then controlled him on the fence and he was trying to throw elbows, but you were very comfortable in those uncomfortable positions, and that comes with the training with the likes of Tom and Phil, doesn't it? Yeah. You obviously drill those positions that you don't necessarily want to be in, but that's how you're going to survive those moments and ultimately win a fight when that does happen in a fight. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I knew my guy, well, I studied him loads, and his last 2 fights before me, he'd fought Southpaw. Right. So I was flying to SBG Ireland to train with Colmore, who was the light heavyweight Cage Warriors champion. Now he's in Bellator, I think he's just beat number 5 in the world. He was a Southpaw, so I was doing loads of training with him. He's a great guy, so I was going over once a week, sparring with him. And then I got in my fight, and he come out orthodox. I've done
So
6
you're like,
weeks
what
so
the
far.
hell?
And the coach was like, he's orthodox. So obviously, like, slight. If you're watching that, I'm circling the wrong way, then it was like, right, he's orthodox, do this.
Yeah.
But I feel like he was like ready to go, wanting to impress Dana White. While in my head, I was like, fight your fight, and then if he likes you, he likes you. But a lot of people were like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be going for it. But I was like, you just go for it. I will get knocked out, he will get knocked out. Then like the other person's lost and they never heard of again. So I always thought in my mind I was going to fight my fight. I knew I was more fit than these heavyweights, so I just knew he would either come out and be really nervous or he'd come out crazy. And he'd come out crazy, got some big shots, but I thought I weathered the storm, clinched with him a bit. He went crazy with like big hip throws, and then I remember like scrambling up. And then when I did shoot on him, I remember him feeling like completely, I got him down to the floor and I remember thinking, he's knackered, he's like completely spent all his energy, and it was only 2 minutes because he was going so crazy, while I was more comfortable, I would say, in the fight. And then when I did get him down, he just felt like he was gassed. He half got up and I remember thinking, oh, he's done now, I've got the finish. And obviously the choke something nice. He half grabbed my hand, I remember thinking, oh, he's going to strip it. And then like it just slipped in lovely and I just knew it was done then. I had a mega squeeze on him. So it was definitely experience for my part. I think we had a similar all, both 5-0. But I feel like I've been training with great guys and I've been in so many bad positions with Phil and Tom. And now I'm starting to think, oh, rather than just going crazy to get out, I'm starting to think, right, what's actually the problem in this position? Oh, it's cross-facing, I need to get rid of that. It's pointless going crazy when you're not clearing the actual danger. So I've started thinking to myself, oh, I'm getting caught in this position. Clear the, like, oh, he's controlling your hip, he's controlling your head, and defend them and then work out. And I'm getting loads more success. And I'm feeling like fresher getting up to my feet. While before, just go crazy. Like what I felt like that guy did, went crazy. And then he was like, oh God, I'm gassed now. So I think the occasion got to him. Well, I always knew I was good enough. I just needed to fight my fight, and then he would like us, Dana White.
100%, and he definitely does, because he's put you on the UFC London card against Jamal Pogues, who's another Contender Series alum. He's had 2 fights on the Contender Series, quite a bit more experience than you in terms of his professional MMA record. What do you make of him?
I think I originally saw him win the Contender Series because I think he fought a light heavyweight, didn't get signed, and I think he moved up to heavyweight and got signed. So I was watching all the Contender Series heavyweights anyway because I thought realistically I'll probably get one of these guys in my first fight. So I'd been watching a few anyway, so I think I saw his fight. I got matched with him, then re-watched his fights, and I know he's like a quick athletic guy and there's not going to be any easy fights now in the UFC. When people say, oh, what's he like? I'm like, oh, there's no easy fights now, do you know what I mean? But I've got a good game plan. I feel like I know what he's good at, I know what I'm good at. I feel like my game plan will nullify what he's good at, and I think it'll be a good fight. I think he's explosive. He's like a good boxer, got good wrestling, but I feel like I'm a more well-rounded athlete than him, and he can go 3 rounds, which is good, so I can too. So I'm prepared to go 3 rounds with him. I know that's the case, but I think it's a great matchup for me first one. I think it's like an amazing matchup, like an exciting one. And
to be competing at the O2 Arena so early on in your professional career is going to be incredible, isn't it? The atmosphere that Tom had last year for the Volkov fight and building up to the Blaze fight was so good. Have you visualised the walkout? Have you visualised the crowd? Have you visualised the finish?
Well, I went to the first UFC London when he was the first one Volkov.
First one was Volkov last March.
I went to the Volkov one, I went to the Blades one, so I remember being at the Volkov one, I was the crowd, and I remember going crazy and thinking, oh, this is amazing. Like when Tom walked out, it was going absolutely wild. Remember after the Volkov fight, like everyone was like, oh, there were people diving on top of police cars and I was coming out. So it was amazing. So I know how big the atmosphere is. So it's pointless not thinking about it. No, it's going to be a crazy. I've just got to deal with the emotions at the day. So it'll obviously be the biggest crowd I've been around. But I feel quite comfortable. Like when I'm zoned in, it doesn't really affect us. I'll go there. It'll be great. And then it's like a dream debut because some fighters never get a chance to fight in England that much with the UFC. Like David Grant comes and trains our place quite a bit, and he was saying the last time he fought in UK was 2014. Yeah. I know he's on the London card now, so that could be me. You know, that could be like 6 years away from the UK. So it's great. It's my first one at home. My family can come and watch. My friends are all coming to watch. So I feel like I've got like loads of support for the first one because realistically, it could be all in America now or anywhere. So I think it's a dream debut to be in London, and this one's like amazing for us. Like I got the chance, it was going to be all UFC London, and I got told some dates. Didn't tell us the venue at first, when a few like rumours come through that it was going to be London, so I got more excited, and it like got announced, and I was like, oh, it's perfect.
That's really cool that you were in the crowd last year as well. Could you imagine that, you know, year and 3 months after that, that you would be fighting on a UFC London card?
Oh, well, I remember, I don't think I'd fought on the Contender series yet.
No, it was August.
Yeah, so I was watching the fight. I knew I had a big fight coming up, and it was like, oh, this could be me, you know what I mean? Like, in these big shows. And I remember, like, looking at my friends, looking at the atmosphere and being like, it's amazing. Oh, my mates were like this will be here. And I was like, oh, I was in the back of my mind, I just want to concentrate on my fight. But then, obviously, after I won the fight, I thought, oh, like, I'm going to have to get ready. This is going to be me. I'm going to be wanting out in front of the big crowds, and like everyone's going to be shouting and cheering for me. So it was amazing. So like, I always thought, like, I'd be in the UFC. I always knew I was good enough. It was really hard to get matched earlier on. Like, I got a lot of like journeymen, I would say. The records weren't great, but my coaches, I was fighting in front. Yeah, I was like offering people my purse to fighters. It's become a nightmare. Like, there's people in the top 10, like regional, who weren't really wanting to fight us. I got matched up with loads of guys, and I was knocked back and stuff like that. So it's a nightmare. I started to fight what I got. So my record looked, if people were looking, they probably saw it's padded record. But I've always said I wanted to fight good guys, I just never could. So I got to 5-0, and the Contender series came, and like, I remember, well, I'm useless with odds, so I saw the underdog like plus 100. I didn't have a clue about it. I remember watching, thinking, I'm the favourite here, like. And then after, everyone was like, oh, you were a massive underdog, I had loads of money on you, and I was like, oh, it doesn't really bother us. And then
probably a good thing you don't know about it then, isn't it?
But I remember watching YouTube, and there was loads of people after the fight where, like, I watched the breakdowns of people talking about it, and they were all saying, oh, Mick's fought not very good guys, they're both 5-0, but Eduardo's got the much better quality opponents. And there was one guy on YouTube who said, look, they're both 5-0, Eduardo's people have got better records, but they're not great. They were 3-0, but they weren't great people themselves. So, like, realistically, on a skill set, Mick's probably is more a skilled athlete. He's got the better defence than that, and Eduardo's beating people with a better record, but they're not necessarily greater opponents. But obviously people just look at the records, and like, I knew the UFC wanted Eduardo. He was fighting on bigger shows. He was on the UFC Fight Pass shows, and I was the regional, and they'll have just looked at me and saw 5-0 heavyweight. It looks mint if he gets beat, because we've signed a 5-0 heavyweight, 6-0, all knockouts, entertaining. And obviously I won, and I looked good, and they were like, oh, he can fight a bit. I remember after thinking, oh, people kind of say now, I've just fought useless people. He was good, and I beat him and looked good. And then I remember thinking in my head, now I'm like ready for the UFC. Like, I feel like I'm beat all these. Like, I come in training session some day, and I feel like I can beat anybody on certain days. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just have belief in myself, and then train with great guys like Phil and Tom. I can see myself getting better, and like, look how good Tom's doing, look how good Phil's doing, and like, I'm like competitive with these guys. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like mega confident at the minute going into this fight.
The first day that Tom signed for the UFC, I was there in the UFC gym in Nottingham. He announced that he'd signed with the UFC, and I asked him, of all the heavyweights out there, who would be his dream match? And he said Brock Lesnar. Right. So I'm going to ask you the same. Who would be your dream match in the heavyweight division?
Oh, at the minute, I never think of opponents. People ask us this all the time, so when I get this one out of the way, but right in the future, if I was doing well, one with the most money, I think. The one with the most money, who was big at the time.
Think about the top 10 now.
Top 10 now. If it was like in the future,
obviously you've got Jones, right?
Yeah.
You've got John Jones. You've got Cyril Gann. You've got Pavlovich.
Yeah.
Those are the big guys at the moment. Obviously, apart from Tom as well.
Aye, Tom's my training partner, but I'm obviously miles off them guys. But it'd be great to fight John Jones. Wouldn't it? It'd be great to fight John Jones, I think, 100%. In the future. Yeah, I think that'd be the one. Fight John, and then like you're getting him at the end of his career, so you beat him, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's beat John Jones." How many people can say that? Well, nobody can say that.
100%. And just with Tom as well, good friend of yours, to see how he's overcome what he's overcome in such a short space of time. He's been on an absolute tear in the heavyweight division. What have you made of his recovery, and what are you expecting in that main event against Tibora?
Oh, well, I trained with Tom years ago now. I think I went originally. Tom was fighting cage warriors, and I first trained with him. Right. And he was just got signed to the UFC. Then I helped him prepare for his first one. I was going to Kelbon and train with him down in Liverpool. So I remember thinking, knowing how good he was, and then after the Blades fight, I remember talking to him, and it turned out he'd been fighting with like a damaged knee like all his life. And then coming back now and seeing him, he's like got 2 knees and he's 100% now, and he's amazing. Do you know what I mean? I've been there, like, I've learned so much from him. So I think now people will say it even better, Tom Aspinall. Like, I know he's been killing people anyway, but now he's like got 2 knees. He's like scrambling loads better. Obviously he's striking, he's lightning fast. So I think he'll smash Tibura. I do think so. Like, nothing against Tibura, but just know how good Tom is. And then he's got to get some big fight, and he's got to be fighting for like the interim belt at least next on. I think obviously unlucky with Blades with the kick. I know Blades is fought since, obviously didn't hang about. I feel like he'll beat Ty Brewer, they'll give him some in the top 5, and it'll probably be for an interim title, if not a title fight has to be.
Final one as well, the UFC's not been to the North East in a very long time. I think it was like 2008, 2009, maybe one that...
I'm sure somebody like BJ Penn or something thought that was
Penn, was it like a Stevenson maybe? Yeah, Joe Stevenson maybe.
Sure originally it went back in the day, and I remember talking to my friends, it was before I was into the UFC as much, 2008, but I remember my friends saying they were practically like, people were going and they were practically giving out tickets, and people were like, oh, watch that cage fighting thing, and my mate was like, you didn't realise you just watched one of the best people of ever fight in Newcastle, and like loads of people just didn't even realise. So yeah, the following's definitely getting back in the UK, but I think before it comes to the North East, it'll have to go places like Manchester and Liverpool first, I think. Obviously, people are pushing away now from the North East and north of England. That would be great, but I think it's still a while off, because it's still like... when I was in Vegas, I watched the Usman Edwards 2 fight in a pub in my hotel, and people were like watch the football over here. Everyone was cheering the fights, jumping all over, stopping up for it. Well, I feel like in England, if it's not a big card, there's still a lot of people who are like still watch the boxing, especially older people. So it's definitely getting bigger now, but I still feel like it needs to push its way in more. It's definitely becoming more household names and stuff, but it's still a little bit behind boxing, I would say, and people, especially like older people. So I feel like it's still a few years if we keep getting good athletes coming through. There's a lot of great English fighters now. There's no reason why the cards can't come and put like these great cards on.
You mentioned BJ Penn as being one of the greatest ever. Obviously, you weren't watching the sport at that point. Who were the guys that got you into MMA? Who were your favourite fighters?
When I very first started training MMA, I started watching it. Obviously, Jones has always been the staple, watching Jones. Because Staffson was doing really good at the time at light heavyweight. And then I obviously always liked the bigger guys, like Cain Velasquez was like the boy heavyweight killing everybody. I remember like loving Cain Velasquez. In British fighters, I used to love Jimmy Manoa.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a proper kid, I'd only been training a couple of weeks. I went to Bama, and he was headlining the card, and I remember thinking, oh, he was 11-0, 12-0, like all first round knockouts. So I was thinking, oh, who's this guy? And I think he spinning back fist and head kicked the lad and like knocked him clean out in round 1. I remember his walkout was amazing. I think he got signed at UFC straight after. I remember I liked him. I liked his style. He was explosive. So I liked Jimmy Manoa. I watched him. I would say Staffson. He was like, boxing looked amazing. I watched him, so I was like loving him. And then that was it probably. I got in with them, like the original people, and then I was on the bigger guys I watched. And then obviously got into it more, started fighting MMA more, and then like the more talk people, they're like, you know, heavyweights don't have to have that many fights, and they get the UFC, and I was always like, oh yeah, and talk about it. And then I went pro, and it was like 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, like started getting a bit of like a regional name. People sort of knew who I was, and started thinking, oh, I'm pretty good at this, you know, I'm gonna fight. Then I got the Contender series, and I was like, yes, this is like my chance. I was quite chill about it. I wasn't like, didn't let it get crazy, like thinking, I need to get the finish, like some people did. My coach was really good at keeping us grounded. He was like, look, you just swing out, you just flip a coin every time. Like anybody can just knock each other out if they just swing. So he's like, you've got to stick what you're good at. And he's like, worst case, doesn't sign you come off a win, you can get any of the big shows and we just go again. So I was in the belief that I knew he'd like me. So I went out there, obviously got the win, and then it was like, oh, at the UFC now. And then I had like, let it sink in. It just didn't feel real at first. It was like around my friends, and I was like, in the UFC now, you know, like it was crazy. Like everyone was up at 4:30 still, rang everybody. It was like a mint. I come home, flew home, like 12-hour flight, knackered, and like everybody was in my front garden, like celebrating, and I was like, oh god. And like loads of people from Sunderland actually noticed us. I just think they wouldn't, and they were like, oh, you're fighting the UFC soon. So I have loads of people come to us and be like, oh, good luck. So I didn't realise how big it actually was in like the north of England. Like people actually want you to do well and stuff. So hopefully fight in London, get a win. Come away with no injuries, and then hopefully fight again like October, November time, get one in for the end of the year, and that's 2 for me year, and then look to build from there.
Perfect. You've got a 100% winning record. You want that to continue. What are you going for? Knockout or submission?
I'm never really fussy. Like
Win's a win, right?
Yeah, I like a finish, but I always think myself, think you're going 3 rounds, There's no worse to think you're going to put somebody out early, and it's in the 3rd round, you're like, oh god. So I always think 3 rounds is going to be a really hard fight. And I'm always not hunting the finish. I'm always more, I want to look good in that. I want people to watch us and think, oh look, his boxing looks great, this looks great, his grappling looks great. So I'll go in there, I've got a game plan I need to stick to. Hopefully that'll work in there, and I'll slowly pick them apart and get the finish. Maybe, I think 2nd or maybe 3rd round I'll get the finish. Perfect,
Mick. Best of luck. I'm going to be there on July 22nd. Can't wait for it, and I'm looking forward to see where your career goes. Thank you very much, man.